Hey, I'm Nick Kalikas. Welcome to the show where you get first look at the latest odds before they hit the sportsbooks.
And I'm Miguel Urijah.
This is the place for a unique look at MMA from a gambler's perspective.
And this is MMA Oddsbreaker. Welcome to the show. Nick Kalikas alongside Miguel Urijah.
On today's show, Nick and I are going to look back at this past weekend's two big events, UFC on Fox 2 and Strikeforce in Ohio. See how things unfolded there.
And on today's Oddsbreaker segment, I'll be joined by two UFC veterans, Derek Noble and Nick Thompson. Both guys will help me break 4 original odds that have not hit the sportsbooks yet.
All right, let's start the show off with a little trip to Australia. Take a look at UFC on Fox 2. Nick, what'd you think? The big main event between Thiago and Martin Kampmann.
Well, from top to bottom, I thought the whole card was pretty entertaining, a great card. Again, it's pretty neat to see the UFC traveling around in various areas. So the main event between Alves and Kampmann, what a fight. Alves was dominating, and literally the last minute of the fight, as you all know, Kampmann gets him in a sub and finishes the fight, which was initiated, though, by Thiago Alves. So he made a mistake there. Kampmann capitalized and took the fight. I mean, that's drama right there. So in a way, for the fight fans, I think that's kind of fighting you want to see. You want to see something dramatic like that happen. So I think it worked out well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kampmann put his name right in the title picture with that fight. I think everybody's going to want to see him fight again after that. I think he did a good job. I think, Kampmann conned it, maybe. But he's right there in the top notch in that weight class, and it's a tough weight class. Great job. My hat's off to him. And Thiago, very talented fighter. Another step back, and I think, we've seen him top off already, and very talented, but what a bonehead move.
Well, kind of bonehead move, yes, but at the same time, I was impressed with him. I think that he has that motivation back, and he looked good. He was in shape. He made the weight cut, so it's a shame because we've seen some progress from Thiago again, and I think he has that hunger, and if Thiago's focused, anybody in the welterweight division is in trouble. He's that talented and that type of guy, so hopefully you're wrong, and he hasn't topped off yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if he could be onto something there.
And then there was that flyweight tournament heading into the 125-pound weight class. Very exciting fights. Ian McCall put up a war. Great stuff on there. What'd you think?
Well, that fight, the bummer was how the commission ended up getting the decision wrong right away. And actually for the sports books, it caused a little mess because it was announced that same night. And they corrected it. It wasn't really judge's error. It was more of an announcing error, reading it. So all bets got canceled at the books on Demetrius Johnson and Ian McCall. But it was a great fight. I think Johnson personally won that fight. He won the first 2 rounds, competitive rounds, but then McCall won, obviously, the 3rd round. I don't know if it was a 10-8 round. At the end there, he did almost stop the fight. A lot of referees probably would have stopped the fight. I was glad to see that it didn't get stopped, though, because Demetrius Johnson's a tough guy. And, he had a great performance up until that point, which he got his back taken. And Ian McCall is very game, very dangerous, probably underestimated, underrated.
Yeah, I liked everything I saw in the fight. Unfortunate with the judges. There's really nothing you can do about it. They kind of have to do the fight again, which we'll see. And that leaves you Joseph Benavidez on the other end waiting on the winner. Benavidez looked good in his match, and I had picked against him, so my hat's off to him.
Yeah, he looked dominant, and a lot of people weren't shocked. There was a huge line there, and he did come through. But all in all, it was a great card and a great debut by the flyweights.
And how about we head over to Columbus, Ohio for another crazy night over there at Strikeforce?
Man, it was a crazy night. Rousey and Miesha Tate got so much attention. I mean, really, they overshadowed the UFC, let's face it, as far as MMA mainstream media goes. I mean, the focus was on the ladies this weekend, and deservingly so. The fight lasted a few minutes. I mean, close to the end of round 1, but we've seen a battle up until that point. Back and forth battle. Miesha Tate came to fight. Ronda Rousey, of course, was impressive. That's exactly what we expected from her if he hit the ground. Tremendous scrambles back and forth, but Miesha was game, man. It was a great fight.
It was an awesome fight. I think that they elevated women's MMA. I think that the cyborg thing is a thing of the past. We now have another dominant fighter here in Ronda Rousey. I thought it was a great performance. And it's one of those things. I think it's fair to say that we saw a fight, not a women's fight. It's just a fight. It could have been. I don't want to demean them by saying women because people get the idea that it's like the WNBA or something like that. It's not the case. In this sport, One-on-one, the women can do almost everything that the men can do, and they can do more than some of the men in terms of flexibility and some of the things. So I love the women's division, and I love what we saw in that fight.
Yeah, it was a great fight. Fighting is fighting, and a lot of times we see more entertaining fights come out of the ladies' division, no doubt. But yeah, Rousey, I think, is going to remain champion for a long time, and I'm really happy for her. We've seen the little history of her background. She's had a tough life, and she succeeded. She got to the point where she wanted to be. So congratulations to Ronda Rousey and all those bettors out there that won that fight as well.
Let's stick with Strikeforce for some honorable mentions. We had KJ Noons taking on Josh Thompson, and what will likely lead to Thompson and Melendez 3. We'll take a look at it. I thought Thompson was a little methodical. I thought he won the fight. A little bit boring, but one of the down points of the show on a great show. Then we had Mizaki taking on Paul Daly. What'd you think of that?
Misaki showed up, man. I love him at welterweight. He came to fight. He wasn't intimidated at all. He pushed the pace against Paul Daly, a striker. I thought he was going to be in trouble if he remained on the feet because Daly has so much power. And we've seen Misaki get tagged and go down recently, too. He's been in such a great, long career that a lot of people thought that it would affect him. But he looked great, like I said, man. Hats off to Misaki. Definitely a player. He wants to go over to the UFC and compete, hopefully one day UFC Japan, and maybe the UFC will actually open their eyes and bring him over when they do have that card. So Misaki, great job.
Absolutely. He looked terrific. Daly has a little bit of that Melvin Guillard streak, whereas when you think he's rising, he takes a couple of losses, and here he took one where I believe he was favored in the fight.
Yeah, he was actually a heavy favorite. He was one of the favorites that went down. He was around 3.5 to 1, I'm sorry, at closing time. So a lot of people were shocked by that result.
And we had Jacare de Souza, the former champion there, pick up another win over Bristol Marundi. What'd you think of that?
Jacare got the fight to the ground eventually and ended up submitting him late in round 3. Did what he was supposed to do. Impressive, but at the same time, not too impressive. That's, again, what he kind of should have done. But the other, we should say, honorable mention goes out to Lamumba Sayers against Scott Smith. Sayers looked dominant. Tremendous win for Sayers. And I think even though you look at his record, it might not be too impressive. He's getting better, and he's going to be a force, definitely, at middleweight. Okay, let's get right into our Oddsbreaker segment. Let me introduce both of our guests. First, a UFC veteran, Derek the Eraser Noble. Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing well. Thank you for being on with us today. And also joining us today, another UFC veteran and former Bodog Fight welterweight champion, Nick the Goat Thompson. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, before we get started here, let me explain this segment to the public out there. Our sponsored sportsbook, BetDSI, has donated a $5K bankroll to both Derek and Nick. They get to select from the 4 fights that I've chosen today and get to wager $500 either on the favorite or the underdog. Okay, let's get right into the first fight. Comes to us from UFC on Fuel TV 3. It's the main event between Dustin Poirier and Chang Sung Jung. We're going to start off with Derek first. And again, I apologize if I'm butchering Dustin's name here. But Derek, I'm going to open up Dustin, a pretty sizable favorite. He's coming in at minus 375. The comeback on Chang Sung Jung is at plus 285. So give me your take and give me your bet on this first fight.
This first fight, I actually haven't seen either of these two guys fight live or on television, so this is a tough fight for me to call. I would probably, based on opponents and fight experience, I'd probably go with the favorite, Dustin Poirier, and that's who I'd place my bet on for this fight.
Okay, so you're going to go with the favorite. He's going to be decent amounts of risk here because if you are going with Dustin Poirier, it's going to be risking $1,875 to win $500 there. So let's get Nick's take real quick on this fight as well. Poirier versus Jung. Who do you got?
So wait a minute. The guy I'm going against hasn't seen either of them fight. Well, that's real helpful to the bettors out there. Thanks, Noble. I think if you look at them both, they're both solid fighters. The Korean Zombie clearly has a better nickname, which is huge. And more importantly, he's really got a signature win in Mark Hominick that I don't think Dustin has yet. It's probably a toss-up fight. And if you're going to give me that difference in odds, I'm definitely going to take the Korean Zombie.
Okay, so Nick Thompson's going to go with the dog money here, and it's going to be $500 to win $1,425. Now, again, I think Derek's reaction typically, for those that haven't maybe watched footage on the guys, is going to be pretty normal, and I think most people would say that Dustin Poirier is going to come through. But we're going to see how this fight plays out. You guys did split, one favorite, one dog, and this fight takes place on May 15th. Okay, moving on to the second fight in today's Oddsbreaker segment, also from the same card, UFC on Fuel TV 3 that takes place in Fairfax, Virginia. It's another interesting fight, this time at lightweight, between Jeremy Stephens and Donald Cerrone. Both guys coming off a loss, so we're going to shoot it over to Nick, start us off here with this fight. I'm going to open up the Cowboy at minus 260. So again, a decent price here on the favorite, minus 260 with a comeback, plus 200 on Jeremy Stephens. What do you got, Nick?
I think the Cowboy is clearly the better fighter. However, his wrestling is suspect. Stephens has really only struggled against very athletic guys, which I don't think the Cowboy is. The Cowboy is very talented on the ground, good striking, but I think given the money, there's a decent chance that Stephens takes him down and avoids a submission. He hasn't been submitted since 2009 by Lazan, and I think though Cerrone's the better fighter and the safe pick, given the money, I'm going to take Stephens.
Okay, so you're going to roll with the underdog here. It's going to be Jeremy Stephens. You're going to bet $500 to win $1,000. Let's get Derek's take on this now. Derek, you're familiar with both these guys, correct?
Yeah, I've seen both these guys fight. Familiar with them. I somewhat agree with Nick's assessment if I was hearing correctly, but I think Stephens has a puncher's chance. He hits hard and he swings for the fences. But Cerrone is, I think he's a technically superior fighter, striking and on the ground. I think if Stephens tries to take him down, I think he's going to be in trouble with Cerrone's submissions. And I would go with the favorite on this fight. I think Cerrone is going to take it, and that's what I'd place my money on.
Okay, so Derek is going to go with the favorite in this fight. You're taking Cowboy Cerrone at minus 260. It's going to be $1,300 to win $500. Should be another very competitive and intriguing matchup. Again, it takes place on UFC on Fuel TV 3. Okay, the third fight today comes to us from UFC 146, a great pay-per-view card. This should be on the main card here. Evan Dunham and Edson Barboza, two very highly ranked lightweights in the UFC lightweight division. We're going to start off with Derek this time. I'm going to open up Edson Barboza. Might not be surprised that he's coming in the favorite, but again, a decent price though. Minus 310 is the price on Edson Barboza. Now the comeback on Evan Dunham is going to be plus 240. So Derek, give me your take on this fight.
Yeah, it's another close fight. Both these guys are tough guys. Good experience. I think Dunham maybe has a little bit more big fight experience, but I tend to think that he's going to be a little outmatched on the feet. I think he's going to struggle with Barboza, and I don't know if his wrestling is going to be good enough to take him down and keep him there. And I just don't think he'll be able to strike with him. So I would take Barboza by KO.
Derek's going to go with the favorite here. It's going to be minus 310, $1,550 to win $500 on Edson Barboza. Let's go to Nick Thompson. Nick, what do you think about this fight?
I think Dunham's a stud. He really seems to fight to the level his opponent every time. There hasn't been a fight where he's just been blown out, and he's fought better competition. So I would take Dunham even with just even money, much less if you're going to give me odds.
All right, very strong statement, though. So pretty confident from Nick Thompson. He's going to go with the underdog here, Evan Dunham. It's going to be risking $500 to win $1,200. And again, this fight takes place on the main card, UFC 146. All right, guys, a lot of talk recently about the Ultimate Fighter season coming up. So I figured we'd go ahead and break the odds on the Ultimate Fighter coaching staff here between Urijah Faber and Dominick Cruz. The trilogy, to complete the trilogy, which takes place supposedly at UFC 148. Now, it could change, but right now that's what we're hearing, which is on July 7th, and it should be another tremendous battle. Their last fight was close. Dominick Cruz is going to open up the favorite, and we're going to start off with Nick Thompson here on this fight. Dominick Cruz coming in at minus 215. The comeback is going to be plus 165 on Urijah Faber. Nick, what do you think?
I'm a Faber fan. I'll be cheering for him, but I think I've got to go with Cruz. Cruz, his last loss to Faber, he then comes back to the UFC after that fight, or the WEC. Hasn't lost since, 9 fights in a row, and seems to get better every time. I think we'll see an even better Cruz than we did the last time we fought Faber. And I don't even know if this fight will be all that close. I'm hopeful it is because I like Faber, but I've got to go with Cruz.
All right, so you're going to go with the favorite, minus 215. Again, a little bit more competitive line than we've seen on the show so far. But he is still laying $1,075 to win $500 on the favorite, Dominick Cruz. Now, Derek, what do you think about Urijah Faber and Dominick Cruz, the trilogy?
I think it's another close fight. I think this is pretty much a pick'em fight. I personally thought Faber won the second fight they had. I thought he landed better shots and he was more aggressive. So I'm gonna take him to win the third fight here. I'm gonna pick Faber.
All right, so you're going to go with the underdog here, plus 165. It's going to be 500 to win 825. It was a very competitive fight, and a lot of people do think that Faber did win the last one, so it was kind of a controversial decision. It's going to be competitive, and again, supposedly it's going to take place UFC 148, the headliner there, Cruz versus Faber 3. Okay, guys, fantastic job on the Oddsbreaker segment today. Really good to get a fighter's perspective from time to time on the show. Before we let you go, I do want to get maybe some upcoming events or see what you guys are up to right now. So let's start off with Derek first. Derek, what do you got going on?
Right now, I'm going to make kind of my comeback fight. I haven't fought for a little over a year and a half. I'm going to fight Lyle Beerbaum on the Worldwide Mixed Martial Arts event in El Paso, Texas on March 31st. So I'm excited to be back in the ring, and I'll be ready to go.
That's a big fight coming up. Lyle Beerbaum definitely on everybody's radar. So a win over Beerbaum, I'm sure, will go a long way. So good luck on that fight here coming up. And before we let you go, Nick, man, you're looking great. Your retirement's been treating you well. What do you got going on?
I've gotten to eat a lot of cake and ice cream with my kids, which has been great. Haven't been able to do that in a long time. Other than that, I'm coaching at my gym, Ironworks Training Center, and this weekend I'll be cornering Travis Pugh in his Bellator fight. So I'm looking forward to being back just next to the cage instead of inside.
All right, guys. Again, thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll get you guys back on in the near future.
Welcome back to the show. Coming out of another super interesting Oddsbreaker segment, 2 UFC veterans picking the fights. They picked everyone different, Nick. I found that interesting.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. Typically, you don't see that. They're usually on at least one fight or two. But let's get right into the odds adjustment segment. Now, this is the part of the show that we move a line based on the guy's bet. So both of you guys split down the middle. I mean, every fight, all 4 fights that we're going to talk about today. So I'm not going to adjust any of the lines, but we are going to head over and talk about each one and get Miguel's take on them. Starting off with Dustin Poirier versus Chang Sung Jung. Now, we had Derek openly admit he hasn't really watched footage on his fight. He's got a fight himself coming up, so give the guy some credit and a break here. He's got more important things to focus on, obviously, Lyle Beerbaum, more in particular. So he wasn't too sure. He just basically looked at some basic info, and he picked the common choice, I think, in Dustin Poirier here. He is a heavy favorite coming in. So Derek laid the juice on Dustin Poirier, but on the other hand, we had Nick Thompson select the dog money in Chang Sung Jung. Now, he is familiar with Jung. He likes what he sees in him, and he likes the price. What's your take on this one?
Yeah, I would select with Nick on this one. I would take Jung. No disrespect to Poirier. I know he's got a lot of heat, trains with good people, and he's got the hype coming up and stuff. But I like the Koreans coming into the UFC. I think they've had some good performances that we've already seen, and I think they have a lot to offer. I think cultural and mindset, Korea is a fighting country, and you're about to see that.
Yeah, I'm going to probably actually agree with Derek on this fight. I think that Dustin Poirier is well-rounded enough that he can avoid a lot of the damage that Chang Sung Jung can dish out on the feet or basically in submission game as well. So I think Dustin Poirier's fight to win or lose, and that's why he's a heavy favorite, and I think he belongs a heavy favorite. So I'm agreeing with Derek. You're agreeing with Nick on this fight. But let's move on to the second fight here. It's another interesting fight from the same card, Jeremy Stephens versus Donald Cerrone. Now, this fight is at lightweight. I opened Cerrone minus 260, plus 200. He's coming off a loss, but so is Stephens. Both of them competitive. Both of these guys are at the top tier of the lightweights. Should be an interesting fight, competitive fight, but Cerrone's opening up 2.5 to 1. Now, in this particular fight, again, we had Derek go with the favorite in Cerrone, and we had Nick Thompson choose the underdog in Stephens. Could be some value at Jeremy Stephens at plus 200. What are your thoughts?
Certainly Stephens is not somebody to scoff at, for sure. But I would go with Cerrone on this one. I'm not ready to jump off the Cerrone bandwagon. I was a fan of his. He did come off a loss where, quite honestly, Diaz dominated him and beat him up. And I think he's got the right mindset to come back from that and give us a great performance. And that's what I'm looking for out of Cerrone. Okay,
so you are going to agree that Cerrone's probably the side here. For me, I'm typically up in the air right now. I think Cerrone is the more well-rounded fighter, and Jeremy Stephens, if he does go for a takedown, he's going to have to be very cautious because Cerrone's so wicked on the ground. So I could see the edge here in Cerrone. We might see the line get bet up a little bit more, but Stephens always dangerous and always game, so it's going to be a hard actual bet to make, I think. But let's move on to the third fight. Evan Dunham versus Edson Barboza, man. Barboza, the hype on this guy is unreal. We've seen him coming off a spectacular highlight reel knockout over Terry Edom, and Terry's a great fighter, man. A lot of respect out there from the diehards, deservingly so. Great striker, but Barboza was impressive, and I think you kind of needed to see Barboza be impressive in that fight because there was a lot of fans starting to maybe lose, I don't want to say credibility or lose a little bit of trust in Barboza's style because he's had some close competitive fights. But in this particular situation, he is coming in minus 310. The comeback is plus 240 on Dunham. What's your take on this one?
Barboza all the way. I think he's the real deal.
Okay, now Barboza was actually selected again by Derek, and Nick Thompson disagreed. He thinks that even at even money, he would go with Evan Dunham in this fight. So he's going to roll with the plus 240, but you're very clear that Edson Barboza takes this fight?
Yeah, I think so. I like Nick. I've known Nick for a long time, and I respect his opinion, but I got to take the Brazilian on this. I kind of find their combination of technique and hunger coming into the UFC. This is what these guys have been dreaming about. And Dunham's coming off a couple of unimpressive appearances. I'm not sold on him.
Yeah, if he doesn't get this fight to the floor, Dunham I'm talking about, I think he is going to be in trouble. Edson Barboza is going to have an actual, it might not seem like it on paper, but he's going to have a sizable reach advantage, I believe 5 inches on the feet, and he can bang, man. So definitely want to take this fight to the ground and try to get a sub if you're Dunham. But again, Barboza is going to be game there as well. So hard fight for him. That's why he's coming in a heavy favorite. We're going to see what the public does with this line. All right, let's move on to the fourth fight, the bonus fight here between Faber and Cruz. I think it was good timing bringing this fight out with the Ultimate Fighter launching and a lot of buzz between the two right now. The trilogy takes place, I believe, at UFC 148. A competitive line, but the champion Cruz is coming in the favorite, minus 215, comeback plus 165. Now, again, Derek went with the underdog price in Faber, but Nick Thompson thought that Cruz might have an easier time this time. At minus 215, so he selected the favorite in Dominick Cruz. What's your take on this fight?
See, here we go. I'm going to agree with Nick Thompson on this one. I think Cruz rolls. Faber's been around for a long time. He's a top-notch guy. This is probably the best weight class for him, so it's definitely going to be a war. It's a trilogy. They've both won one, so it's a rubber match. There's a lot to find out, but I'm just a Cruz fan. I think at the end of the day, Cruz is talented enough to stay ahead of the pace and win this fight.
But is it enough to really lay over 2 times your money?
I understand that. You definitely have to weigh that in, as everybody has their own mindset on it. In some of these cases, though, even no matter what the lines are, if I'm confident a certain guy is going to get his hand raised at the end of the day, you have to just go that way. And I feel this is Cruz's match to lose. He's confident. He's coming in as the champion this time, and this will cement some of what his legacy will be, is to win the trilogy over a top guy like Faber, and I think Cruz is in a good position to do that.
Well, I wouldn't jump the gun and say that Cruz has this win locked up. I think that at plus 165 is going to be tempting to a lot of people because their last fight was so competitive, and I think you had a different set of judges in there. They could have seen things a little differently. We might have seen a split decision or even a close decision for Faber. It was a competitive fight. Even though Cruz, I'm not saying he didn't deserve to win that fight. He deserved to win that fight. It was a great fight, but the odds, I'm not sure which way the public's going to go with. One thing's for sure, it's going to be a great fight. So all of us, I know it sounds cheesy, but all of us are going to win, man. That anytime you get 2 stars like this lined up that can really fight and throw down in all aspects of the game, it's a great fight.
And I don't want to say, they hate each other and stuff, but there's a rivalry there, and we're going to get to watch it on the reality show and see where that goes, because I like that. I like the build-up coming into this fight too, and I think we're going to be in for a treat.
Yeah, I agree.
And now it's time for our mailbag segment. If you have any questions about MMA or any questions for Nick about the odds that you see us break right here on the show, go ahead and send us an email to MMAoddsbreakers@gmail.com. If we select your question and use it on the air, we'll send you a t-shirt, so make sure to include your address along with the email. Nick, this week we got a question from Tripp from Toronto, Canada, and he wants to know what's next for Benson Henderson in the UFC's lightweight division. He's coming off a big win over Frankie Edgar's, the new champion. Nick, what do you think?
It's really tough to say because I know we're seeing it possibly between Jim Miller and Nate Diaz gets one of the next shots, but Anthony Pettis, there's a lot of talk about Anthony Pettis stepping in and facing Benson Henderson for the rematch there. A lot of people are complaining that they want to see the rematch with Edgar first. Do you think Frankie Edgar does deserve to get an immediate rematch?
First, Dana White is on record as saying he thought Pettis right off the top of his head was the first match. Pettis-Henderson is an interesting fight. I think there's no way that you can't not do the rematch with Frankie Edgar. Edgar is a 3-4-time defending champion. He's earned the right. And I don't think, from his mindset, I think he thought he won the fight. I don't think so, but I think he thought he won the fight. I don't think that this match drives him to the 145-pound division like many people have talked about. I think Edgar's going to want his belt back, and I think he's earned it.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, you have to respect the guy, and the decision should ultimately be up to Frankie Edgar. I know they're pushing, wanting to see him drop down because they want to see that super fight between him and Jose Aldo. But I necessarily don't agree. I agree with you. I think that, like I said earlier, it should be up to him. It was a competitive fight, and Frankie, he's shown us before that he game plans well, and he can make things interesting, definitely. So if he does want to come back and get a title shot right away, as he did against Gray, that was a controversial fight that gave him that immediate rematch, for both guys. So I think we should see that again, but we might not. I think we're probably more likely going to see him get skipped over, and Anthony Pettis is going to get the title shot.
Well, that's it for another episode of MMA Oddsbreakers. You can look for the odds that Nick broke right here on the show to start popping up at the sport books throughout this week. And a big special thanks to our two guests, veterans Derek Noble and Nick Thompson. Welterweight talent right there for you.
And for those that want to keep up with the MMA Oddsbreaker show, make sure you follow us on Twitter at MMA Oddsbreaker. For Miguel Iterati, I'm Nick Kalika saying until next time, enjoy the fights.